It recognizes our belief in God, our country, not just individuals, our country, our founding fathers codified this in the documents that founded this country. Our reliance, our belief in God, and our reliance upon God. Of that, there's just no debate on that. You may like it, may not like it. Declaration of Independence, we find these truths to be self-evident, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights, of which are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. It goes on in the Constitution to say we are putting together this Constitution in a preamble to secure the blessings, not only for ourselves, for posterity. And that Constitution followed with a Bill of Rights that enumerated those godly rights given to man, including the very first one, which was the right to believe in God and to express that belief anytime, anywhere, including the public square.
33 million. It's proven to the money investors that people want something to feed their souls, not just their worst desires.
Absolutely.
And
yes, indeed.
This kind of sums up my entire dialogue career on the heat of the night. You ready for this? Okay, this is it. My 7 years on the heat of the night. My dialogue all summarized into this. Get right on it, Chief.
Skinner, but Bubba's my name. I like my iced tea sweet and my women the same. I'm your brown-haired badge here in little old Sparta, but nobody's bigger or tougher or smarter. If you're looking to fight, best not be with me. Gonna be held tight, well now we'll just see. You never know in the heat of the night on TNT. Heat of the night on TNT. Now I don't put on any airs, but then I ain't no slob. Just a redneck boy with a blue-collar job. The ladies I date, they gonna have some fun, cause I'm a big hunk of crime-fighting son of a gun. So if you're looking to fight, come on up in the ring. You wanna be held tight, just about anything. And it happen in the heat of the night on TNT. Hubba, 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 hubba. Heat of the night on TNT. Yeah.
Hollywood, to the mayor's office, and now behind the mic at KXEX. This is the Alan Autry Show. No retreat.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
What the hell's going on out here? Everybody crabbing out there. Nobody.
That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
So, 5 seconds left in the game. Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable. Free at last! Free at last!
You're listening to the Alan Autry Show on the best talk in town. Talk Radio 1550 KXEX. Call Alan now. 559-899-1550.
And welcome to Alan Autry No Retreat. I'm old Alan Autry, and my pronouns are Wooly and Bully. And so happy to have you with us today. Sans Mr. Bob Leone, who's usually with us, but Bob's doing a little regular checkup, having a doc check under the hood there. He texted me and wanted me to make sure that I knew it was just a routine checkup, and I'm sure he'd want me to pass that on to you all, just making sure everything's ticking and going right, and he should be back. Well, he won't be here Friday. He's usually here on Friday, but that is the first Friday of the month, and that's when the Riverdale Cowboys get together, the old high school buddies, and chew the fat and solve the world's problems over there at one of our local restaurants. I think they've settled in on George's. I think they've been there. Great restaurant over there on Blackstone. Here locally, if you haven't gone there and got some good food there at George's, do yourself a favor and do so. And one of these Fridays, I'm going to have to, tape one of these shows and go over there and see my boys, my bros. I love them. I miss them. But anyway, Bobby will be back, God willing, next week on Taco Tuesday. All right, so much to talk about. The midterms 1 week from today, folks. 1 week. Oh gosh, how do I say this without being? I love that word hyperbolic. I like words that say kind of sound what they actually are. I think it's where the word hype came from, and a lot of hype, hyperbolic words and phrases describing what's going to happen next Tuesday, in the sense of its importance to the direction of this country. And it seems like every election, whether it be a presidential election, a midterm, in particular the national elections, but I think it carries down to the state level and sometimes the local level, where people say this is the most important election in the history of our city, our state, our country, the world. But I think in many ways, I've been on this planet for quite a long time, not as much as some, but more than a lot of folks, 70 years old. I used to say I'm pushing 70, now I'm dragging it. And I've seen and lived through some pretty tumultuous times in terms of issues threatening the unity of this country. Because if you don't have unity, you're not going to survive as a country. Now, it's unrealistic to think that everybody's going to have the same ideas, have the same values, if you will. That's just unreasonable. You're never going to have one America in that sense. You're not going to have one state. You're not going to have one city. And in reality, you very seldom have one family where everybody thinks the same and has the same principles and same world view on things. You have to be realistic, but there has to be some core basic principles of truth. I call it a common thread of common sense that runs through us all, that you have to agree upon in order to have a civil society, in order to have a functional family. And just for example, you may pro-life, pro-choice, be for big government, smaller government, all of those things. And you can debate those things, have differences of opinion on those things. And that's good and healthy, actually, to have in place. But you should never have to debate whether one neighborhood deserves to have law and order and safety for its citizens, and another neighborhood doesn't need that. That you can have, walls around your house and security cameras and private security of people carrying guns, and you won't allow someone in a poor neighborhood to arm and protect themselves. That is something that never changes. That's not really a political issue. That is just a common right that every human being here in the United States of America have when you're born here. To have that, and you got to vote. We're a republic, not a democracy. People forget that. We elect people to represent us. We're not a direct democracy. History has shown that really doesn't work that well. That's just a breeding ground for communism and Marxism and all that stuff. But, in what political persuasion would not want their children to have equal access by the laws and the rules to opportunity, education, quality of life, all those things? That's something that doesn't change. That's something that is non-negotiable. It's something that should have some unanimity
among everyone, a fair shake for everyone, that guiding principle of a fair shake for everyone, regardless of, how rich or poor you are, how educated or uneducated you are. You should have a fair shake like everybody else to have an equal chance at opportunity, education, and quality of life. And on the ballot this time, and I've never seen before, common sense principles that we should all agree upon if we call ourselves a civil society that values human worth, all humans. Again, whether you're rich, poor, whatever gender you are, we're suddenly finding ourselves debating whether those principles should be preserved. One of the basic principles that if you choose to break the law in a violent way, you hurt your neighbor violently, you have forfeited your right to be able to walk freely in this society. You need to be put away because you're a harm to law-abiding citizens. And yet we sit back and let this crazy, insane, heartless idea called no cash bail come into existence, where a violent criminal not only don't get a slap on the wrist, they might get a slap on the wrist, but it's with one finger. There's absolutely no deterrent out there for violent crime, and we've seen what's happened. You have violent crime rampant all over this country. You have to have, common sense says you have to have a border as a country. You look around every country, even third world countries, who many people think don't have the same, wherewithal, talents, or whatever, have this bigoted idea about certain third world countries. Even they know you have to have a border or you don't have a country. And here in this, on the ballot, basically is, do you believe in open borders? Come on, come all. We don't care who you are, what you're here for, what your intentions are. Come on. And if you come here to work, that's great. But if you come here to join a gang, that's okay too. We're not going to check your ID. You got to go to driver's, you want to drive a car, you got to get a driver's license. You want to vote, you got to have an ID. How groundbreaking and of logic is that to have the voter ID? But you get my point. This country, one of the basic principles that kids should not only not be taught racism pretty much at birth. You don't tell a kid that you're a racist, you're an oppressor. It doesn't matter what kind of heart you have, no matter how much you love God, no matter how much you love that person of another color. If they're not your color, you're oppressing them. You may have a whole life of showing how much you love your fellow man, fellow woman. And the love is so evident in your life. Mother Teresa, she didn't really care for if you listen to the left, this woke left, oppressor or oppressed by birth ideology, then Mother Teresa was a racist who gave her whole life to helping indigenous Indian people, the poorest of the poor, that were many of them very dark-skinned, and she was light-skinned. So because of that, you just discard anything that Mother Teresa did, including, as I said, give her whole life to the service of the poor, and she's a racist. Because that's just the way it is. You're born that way. If you're born with that skin, you're this way, an oppressor. And if you're born with this type of skin, you're oppressed, no matter if you're born into a very affluent situation. It makes absolutely no sense. It's insane. Yet millions of people have been brainwashed to accept those things, those thoughts, that ideology, that mindset, that hardness of heart. And that's on the ballot. Just do a little pondering. Think about it. And you'll see these candidates on the woke left. And never have I said this on election. I've never said this. I'm an independent. And there's been some good Democrats hold office, some good Republicans hold office. Okay? That I have no qualms in saying that person served well. My grandfather was a diehard Democrat. But he said Dwight Eisenhower was a good president. He had no problem saying that. Nowadays, Ike had an R by his name. He was a Republican. And John Kennedy, I feel, was a good president. There's some say, well, he had a D by his name. Yeah, but he was a right-to-life Democrat. He was for low taxation. He was for strong military. Just because he had a D, he was a Democrat, I'm going to discard that. That's the kind of country we've become. Pick a side based on party affiliation. And by the way, we're no longer just a political party. We're now officially a religion. Okay? If you go against the big D, you have blasphemed against the Democratic God. If you go against the Republican platform at all, you have blasphemed against conservative principles, and you're going to political hell, which is here on earth. You're going to be canceled by your party. They will create hell for you. Folks, we gotta come to our senses in this country. We have some, I'm all for progress. I don't want to go back where we had no air conditioning in our homes. That's like my mom told me about the good old days during the Depression. She says, son, they weren't that good old days to me in a lot of ways. Yes, I missed the strongness of the families and a lot of things she missed about that, but there's a lot of stuff she didn't miss about the so-called good old days. But there was a time, and I remember it vividly, when Democrats and Republicans looked to work together to find common ground, because they truly, per square inch, there were more people in Congress that truly cared about the people rather than their political party back in the day, even during the turbulent 60s. What got the voters' rights bills passed was a bipartisan effort with Lyndon Johnson Republicans. You go on down the line, the major points, issues of this country were bipartisanly constructed, and we've lost that. And in its place, we have this crazy woke left agenda that, and I'll appeal to common sense Democrats, you have to stand up and tell these folks that you've been subservient to. I believe in my heart, as liberal as Nancy Pelosi is, she does not agree with AOC and Omar and all those folks, that far left agenda, the cashless bail, all of that stuff, the open borders. But for some reason, her and the rest of the Democratic Party did not have the political spine to stand up to those folks. Why? I don't know. I got my suspicions. I think they just don't want to be singled out and protested, and they want to be loved by the younger generation that's coming up. And that in itself has permeated society to where we stop being adults to our kids. We stop giving the young people something to look up to. And when we have to, when it's obvious we should put our foot down, we had the courage to do that and say, no, this is not going to happen. I know you're pushing the Democrats. I'm just using them for example. Look, I know you want to let this guy who has a rap sheet a mile long, is clearly violent. He's put 4 or 5 people in the hospital just last week, but we know he had a bad childhood, so he just crushed a guy's skull, so he needs to be let go because he's just misunderstood and he's not a threat to society. You need to pick that individual over the victim. And don't kid yourself. This is not any right-wing wacko stance. This is what is happening. You know how to check it out? Call the office or just listen to any of the mayors that will really tell you the truth of the big cities, what they're dealing with. They'll try to spin it, the Democratic mayors, okay? But you can see right through it. Ask the police chiefs. Ask the police officers. Ask the community leaders in those big cities if this is not what is happening, that the criminals have been allowed to run amok here for now nearly 2 years, and their communities have been devastated by it, traumatized by it. And that truth, that reality has hopefully cut through all political barriers, all political religiosity, if you will, and people are rediscovering that common thread of common sense we all have, regardless if we're Republican, Democrat, Independent, or whatever, and say, this has got to end. We have to feel safe to leave our homes, to go to a restaurant, to go to a store, for our kids to be out and enjoy life. You know, it's this, hopefully, this issue that's on the ballot, that America will wake up and vote with their common sense and not their party. And you see the results of where this woke agenda, if you're part of it, you Democrats need to be the one to exile them. Republicans on the right, these crazy folks that are out there, that hate America as much as those on the woke left, they have a lot in common. The far, far left, the far, far right, they both hate America. They all want to see it torn down and start over again. Republicans, you got to exile that group and not bring in people who just have a legitimate right and express that right to protest their government. Not talking about that. Don't try to bring that group in. And same thing on the left. Don't try to bring in legitimate protesters who want to protest and stand up for their beliefs and try to bring them, put them into Black Lives Matter. There's a lot of folks on the left that do not believe in BLM and what they've stood for, the Marxist agenda that they have, and a lot of folks on the right who do not believe in QAnon and all these other groups that are out there. And that group has to take this country back. And we have a chance to start that this next Tuesday in one short week. So I suggest, I'm never going to, I hate to tell people how to vote. I just said, go to your conscience. Go to prayer. Go to prayer before you go in there and you fill that box in. You do that, we're going to be okay. I think next Tuesday, we can begin that long road back to America we could all be proud of. All of us. There's no saying the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. Well, next Tuesday, we can take that step. This is Alan Autry, No Retreat. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, I want to give you a public service announcement. And I want you to listen to this because when I got this information yesterday, I wouldn't say shocked, but I was pretty close to it. And I need to share it with you. I don't just want to. I need to share this with you because it is a health issue, and we all need to be paying attention. This is Alan Autry, No Retreat, and I'll be right back with that info.
I feel nice. Sugar is fine.
James, I see you up there. You hang on. I'm going to go to you when we come back. I'm going to talk more about this when we come back on radio, but it looks like the Democrats have gone to the bullpen and brought out Barack Obama to try to save the election. I don't know. The bench is kind of thin. I don't know if he's the one that I would reach for, but I don't know where the Democrats go this year. And I'm just picking on them. I mean, the old saying, you make the bed you sleep in. And boy, they've made a very lumpy, uncomfortable bed for this country. And you have to, there's a price to be paid for that. Crazy policy. Just insane policies, unless we never do this again. Now the Republicans could come over if they do take. It looks like they're going to take the House, barring some miracle. Senate looks like it's a toss-up. But if they get both of those parts of Congress, the big eye is going to be on them. They got to be better than what they criticize. You got to do some things different. You got to really reach out and work together. You call Biden
30 seconds.
The big divider. Well, you got to be the uniter and not look just to exact revenge. Some of these Republicans, that's all they can think about. They're salivating. Can't wait to subpoena her and subpoena him and get a little payback. But I think the American people are going to have very little patience for that.
10 seconds.
You're listening to the Alan Autry Show on the best talk in town. Talk Radio 1550 KXEX. Call Alan now. 559-899-1550.
Hey, welcome back to Alan Autry. No retreat. I could never do the twist. A simple dance. I remember it like back 6th, 7th grade. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't get my hips. I would just turn my whole body right to left, man. People just laugh. And I thought I was twisting my hips, but I wasn't. Has absolutely nothing to do with anything, but I told you I will do that from now on. That's just the old, the show. We ramble off. I want you to listen up. What I'm about to say. Not trying to be dramatic here, but this is important stuff. And I don't mean to be mysterious as I tell you this, but I can't tell you the source. Okay, as soon as somebody says that, my eyes roll. And then when I say, but trust me, then my eyes roll again. But I'm asking, I can't tell you where I got this information. I'm going to ask you to trust me. Okay, I'm going to get a moment, let the eyeballs come down. But yesterday I got some information about these booster shots, okay? And trust me, there's not one iota, as Mama used to say, of political motivation behind what I'm about to say. Because when it comes to health, public health, be darn politics in my book. And anybody who tries to play politics with people's health, well, you're going to see the fight inside of me. That's when you cross the line. So there's no political agenda here, what I'm about to say. But I went in to get I can't even give it away like this. Let's put it this way. This latest booster that the government is telling you to get, the individual who has steered me every step of the way, I trust this individual on the vaccines, whether to take them, not to take them. This individual, again, not trying to be mysterious, I just got to protect the identity. There could be some real consequences, as we've seen. If anybody comes through and talks about this in an open and honest way, if they're within the system, and this individual is in the system, in a very, very prominent part of the system, in which this individual sees the data that comes back. Like you take a vaccine, do you come back 5 weeks later and you're okay, or you got COVID or what have you? In terms of the efficacy of the vaccines, this individual sees it in real time. Okay. Now, this individual told me, yes, he would recommend taking the first vaccine. So I did my research, and he was the tiebreaker for me. I trust this guy, does his homework, and he's in the medical profession. He's down deep in there. So I took the first shot. Okay, comes time for the second shot. I go to him, and he says, yeah. Alan, I've looked at the data, looked at the research. I would recommend that you take the second shot. And I did. Now, yesterday, I was considering this latest booster. This individual emphatically said, no. Wouldn't take the booster. which, as you might expect, I followed up with, why not? And he proceeded to inform me, maybe and probably, many of you knew this already. I really didn't. Well, I think I'd heard it, but didn't know if it was true or not. This latest booster, which is either the second, third, or fourth booster, has only been tested on mice. It went right from mice to us. I don't know the effect it had on Mickey, and we don't know the effect it's really going to have long-term or even semi-short-term on human beings, this latest booster that the government's telling everybody to take. Now, the red flag should have went up when the Zelensky, probably murdering her last name, but the head of the CDC, fully vaccinated, as you would imagine, took them all. She just got COVID. But this individual, so, something's going on. This individual, who was my friend, proceeded to tell me these boosters, giving them to people, and they're coming back in like 4 or 5 weeks wanting the therapeutics because they got COVID. Okay, people that have been double vaccinated, the first couple of boosters, this latest mouse booster, and right after the mouse booster, they're getting COVID in big numbers. Okay, now what am I supposed to do with that? You know what I do with that? I asked him flat out, so you don't think I should take this? He said, absolutely not. All right, I've done at least, like I said, there's one thing I like better than doing this show, and I love doing this show, than acting and hanging out with my friends. I love that. I just love things in life that God has blessed me with to be with my kids, my wife, daughters, grandkids, and just you all here. I just love it. But there's one thing I love more than that, and that's sleeping at night. I love my sleep. And if you mess with my sleep, that's an issue. And if I wouldn't have shared this information with you, it would have affected my sleep. So I know some people are going to say, Autry, he's just far left, and you're going to lump me in, which is what people do, especially on social media. Automatically, when I give some cautionary information that is well-founded from a reliable source, I'm now an election denier. I'm racist because I want to have a closed border. I mean, a border that's secure. I know all that. I know when you bring up something like this and you go against the exalted CDC headed by Anthony Fauci and the government, that you're some right-wing. I get it. But those concerns were overridden in a heartbeat. I thought about it a little bit, going, how am I going to share this? Because then I got ashamed of myself. I said, Alan, why are you asking yourself, how are you going to share this with people on your show? Just share it. The heck are you doing? You don't get paralysis of analysis whether to share this information with people. You come on the darn show, you create the show and say how you're committed to the truth. And now you're sitting there trying to say, well, how do I, tactfully, adroitly give this information without making it look like I'm some wacko? So I'm just embarrassed I'd even thought for a second to be that cautious about something like this. And so there's the information that I got, the decision I made. It's up to you, and I would encourage you to just be part of your decision making. But as I said, this individual is not a crackpot at all. This individual is vaccinated as well, but had grave concerns about this latest booster shot. So I've done my duty. Let's go to James from Longview, Texas. You've been waiting a while, James. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing okay, Alan. I
it's
appreciate
great.
all the insight you impart. I just want to ask you a question. Earlier, you were mentioning the strife we have in our nation. It seems like it's a dog-eat-dog world. In your opinion, do the nation's mayors kind of are the only anchor that people trust these days? It seems to be no trust in Washington, D.C., no trust in state capitals, but maybe the mayors are the glue holding things together. What's your opinion?
Well, first of all, James, let me just tell you, it's great to hear your voice. I know you've been through some challenges in life the last few years, and you sound strong, and just can't tell you how much I appreciate your support. People don't know James has been a supporter of mine. I mean, years and years and years and years and years. And it just, I just got to pass that on to you before I answer your question. Just a joy to hear from you, James, and continued blessings in your life for you and your family. Okay, here's my philosophy about government in general and it being effective for the people. What I've seen and what I've seen in history as I study it, the most effective form of government, meaning that the government actually responds to the people and focuses on issues that really matter to people and are influenced by the people, being genuinely influenced by the people, works best the closer that governmental power is to you, that institution of power is to you. The further you let it get away from you, the less they're going to care about you, the less the impact your opinions and your needs are going to be addressed by that government institution. For example, local government is the most effective because the individuals live there. They don't go off any place. You can, like for me, when I was mayor, I did my own shopping. I loved going to the grocery store. Well, I wasn't going to stop going to the grocery store for 4 or 8 years, and I'd run into people and they could get their hands around your throat, figuratively. Go down an aisle. Hey, Mayor, man, I just drove down Nice Avenue and there's just potholes left and right. When are you going to get that fixed? Or, hey, these utility rate increases. I'd go to a ball game. And that's not unusual. Most mayors historically have touched the people. You're closer to the people. And that results in better government because you can't hide from the people as easily, city councils and mayors. But when you the more power you have vested in that local government, the more effective that government's going to be for you. That's why I believe in local control, local power. Vest as much as you can, and that's a basic conservative principle at the federal level that most conservatives in the federal government have. So, hey, we're way away from the cities. Why are we making decisions in Fresno, California, when we're up here in Washington, D.C.? We're all over the place. They in Fresno know what they need. Why don't we give them their tax dollars back to a great degree and let them solve their problems? Let the mayor handle it. That's a basic conservative tenet. But again, the more you the further you let that government, that power, institution of power get away from you, it serves you less and is more ineffective. It goes to the state level. I'm using California as an example. You have it's the problems of water, problems of education here that we have here in the Central Valley. It's if the mayor was heavily involved in education and had the power, or you had a local institution like the Office of Education, vest the power that the state has, which is almost absolute total power over the educational system, put that at the local level, you would drastically overnight have better schools. You'd have a better education system. But it's less effective because they're farther away. Then you get to the federal government, you have the least effective because it's the farthest away, unless you live in Washington, D.C. And so the mayors, the problem is more and more big city mayors, in particular the Democrats, I would have to say exclusively the Democrats. I don't know a Republican mayor, and I was on the Conference of Mayors. I was on the advisory board when I was the mayor of Fresno, that really, when they were going to make a decision locally, got on the phone to the Republican leadership and say, hey, can I do this locally? Can I make this decision? The exact opposite is true with these Democratic mayors. Before they do anything in terms of crime, cracking down on crime, they've got to call the federal representatives and get the DNC's approval to do this. You get out of lockstep with the Democratic Party. And that's why you see a lot of these problems that you're wondering what common sense says you need to do A, B, and C. In New York, you know what to do. Violent offenders, lock them up, give them a sentence commensurate with the crime. But you have Eric Adams in there who now is trying to appease the Democratic Party and being good with the powers that be. You get the London Bridges here, the Mayor Bridges of San Francisco, same thing. I'm going to get tough on crime because she's had enough, right? You don't see anything change. Why? She got the call from the Democratic National Committee. She got a call from the powers that be and said, hey, don't talk that law and order stuff. Why? Because it looks like we're going Republican. And we're going to have the woke left really down our throats. AOC, Omar, all these folks are going to be in there. Bernie said they're going to be in here just up my rear end if you decide you're going to get tough on crime. And you see these mayors inexplicably, well, it's not inexplicably, it's perfectly understandable. They pick politics over serving their city well. And yes, a long-winded answer to your question, mayors, if they stood up, actually stood up to outside influence and said, listen, I'm going to honor the oath I took to my city to keep them safe, to make common sense decisions on jobs, housing, infrastructure, regardless of whether it fits in nicely with an ideology on the left or right. And that's why somebody once said, and I forget who it was, he says all politics are local. That means because, yeah, who was that?
Tip O'Neill.
Tip O'Neill. Okay. And he was absolutely right, James, because why? Because all the decisions, even though they're made at the federal and state level, way away from the local government, land on the local people. All of those crazy decisions about the porous border, the ones that come here illegally are going to small cities, both big and small. When you have policies that fuel inflation, that's destroying the economy, that was done at the federal level. But where is it felt? In communities all over this country, both small and big. So that's why all politics are local, and that's why we on this show, they say, why don't you talk more about local politics? I said, I do every day. Until you figure out locally the source of many of your problems locally are at your state and federal level. And you better be interested. You better educate yourself. You better learn how to fight back, because those policies here for the last 15, 20 years, with one little 4-year window there, have been absolutely catastrophic to cities and small towns and counties around this country. So that's my long-winded, I say yes, your best chance of getting policies that are good for all people in your city, to roll the dice with local government. Again, for the simple reason, they're right there. You can ask for an appointment to meet your councilman. You can go to one of these community meetings, one of these town hall meetings, make your voice be heard. And if you, it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger told me when he was governor, I was mayor. He did a couple of things, left the valley out. I went public on it. So we're not going to tolerate, not going to be left behind anymore. A day later, I got a call from Governor Schwarzenegger asking me if I would come to Sacramento and visit with him. I did. He just let me go. He says, well, why did you say this about me and the policies? And to his credit, let me speak. Well, I know I can talk. So about an hour and a half later, I stopped and said, well, that's it. That's my list of complaints, closer more to 2 hours. And to his credit, he let me. And I just had the list a mile long, how we've been left behind. And he sat there and he looked at me, and I'll never forget. He said, I never knew. I didn't know. And he really didn't. Because the guy's got a big heart. He comes from a farming background, a poor background. He hasn't always been a mega millionaire, probably a billionaire. And his heart was in the right place. He didn't like to leave people or a region behind. And we proceeded to work together throughout the rest of his 6 years in office to bring the resources here and the policies to Central Valley to help us move forward. But you have to speak out. You have to challenge. You have to, what's the old 60s thing, James? Speak truth to power. But now, but now you have the Democrats in bed with the power. Where's the good old Abby Hoffman when you need him? Good, telling corporate America. Where's the good old Tom Hayden, Abby Hoffman? So telling corporate America, look, you can't cancel free speech. You can't do it. Free speech is what we fought and died for. This is a basic liberal tenet, is the ability to say what I want, whenever I want, wherever I want. But now you see that voice silenced. They're in bed with big tech going, hey, about that free speech, not so fast. Can you help us cancel that conservative voice on radio or on social media? Boom, boom, boom. It's a dramatic reversal, 180 that's happened to the Democratic Party, I think. James, you chime in here. I'm rambling. Go ahead.
Well, you're doing an excellent job, Alan. I can't do any better than you have. You've summed it up great.
Well, I appreciate it's a very thoughtful question, though, because it's, people need to start thinking about this. Invest more, push for more institutional powers to be given and to local government. Now, that has to be thought out very carefully because local government, as we see around the country, LA here, city councils, mayors, they can be corrupted like everybody else. But the big eye's on them more. Locally, you can get at them, and you really do. I call it rolling the dice. Who are you going to roll the dice with? In an imperfect system, where's your best chance as a citizen to have government work the best it can for you? And a lot of times that means state, federal government, stay out of the way, give us our tax dollars back. We know what we need in our own city. Let us get together, hash it out, fight it out, because we feel that is the best way that we can come to conclusions and on things that will help us in what we need locally. Because the needs in Central Valley may be completely different than those in Flint, Michigan. Let the locals do it. Okay, we're going to take a break. James, thank you for your call, buddy. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. I've got to talk about Barack Obama being unleashed from that horrible, horrible Martha's Vineyard prison that he's been in. A $12 million mansion to come help the little folks, escape this big old bad Republican coming to get them. We'll be right back.
Burning bright.
God, Sonny little Luke. I'm behind the barn. You been watching your Real McCoys? I'm telling you, you need to watch the show. You'll get hooked. What a sweet, sweet show. It's hard to find that now. I mean, I consider myself a pretty open-minded guy. And I know it's, 2022. It's not 1962. And it's just so hard to find stuff that you're watching a show. Yeah, you got your grandson there and you say, okay, there was maybe a off-color word there before, but you hang it in there. And then the next scene, somebody walks in completely naked. They start doing the what. And, the show it's everywhere. I wish there was some stuff that you could just sit back, watch with your family and not have to hold your breath. That in the next scene, you're going to have something you have to put your hand over your kid's eyes. Yes, I do believe you can be too young to view certain things. So you folks out there that I respect your opinion, that, hey, they see it everywhere, so they're 4 years old. You might as well let them see and hear everything. I just won't buy that. Just won't buy that. And that was the whole thing about the drag queen story time. My opposition to making these young kids who, they're not old enough to make a decision. They're 4 or 5, 6 years old. Go to something like that and see something like that. And I'm not passing judgment on the individuals. Drag queen, that's between them, their God, they believe, or what have you. But I don't believe you should allow kids to go see it. Oh, man, that's nice. Do you hear that as loud in your ears of his mind when I do that? Oh, man. It's a sensitive mic. Need to send it to Dr. Phil, have him a few sessions. I guess there's a great video out on YouTube with Dr. Phil and Joe Rogan. My son gave me a heads up.
1 minute?
I checked that out.
They did a full podcast together.
Recently?
Maybe a couple years ago.
Oh, they did.
It was like 2 or 3 hours, though.
Yeah, my son told me that they were talking about homelessness. It was very interesting, their take on it. They had kind of differing takes. Both made good points, apparently. I like that about conversations when both people have good points. People don't get mad because they don't go along with
30 seconds?
In line with what they think. It's called stimulating conversation. You would have stimulating conversation. And have little disagreements.
10 seconds?
You're listening to the Alan Autry Show on the best talk in town. Talk Radio 1550 KXEX. Call Alan now, 559-899-1550.
And welcome back to Alan Autry No Retreat. Thank you, James, for your phone call. Hadn't planned on going to that subject, but glad we did. Very important. Okay, I said we were going to go to the Barack Obama coming out of the bullpen to go to try to save the Democrats. But first, I'd like to check with Jeremy. First of all, let me send all of the best wishes that we possibly can from KXEX, myself, and everyone here to the Pelosi family. Wish Paul Pelosi a very speedy recovery. I don't care what politician you are, you don't deserve to be hit in the head with a hammer. Goodness gracious. This Lee Zeldin attacked Republican by a crazy man with a knife. Rand Paul being attacked, broken ribs. None of that is excusable because you disagree with somebody politically. So really, from the bottom of my heart, we wish him a speedy recovery. But has the assailant been released yet? Do you, Jeremy? I thought with the no cash bail that they let the guy out with a hatchet in McDonald's in New York. He wielded a hatchet. They let him out. The guy that pushed the person into the subway, they let him out. Why aren't they letting this guy? Not that I want them to, but I mean in keeping with the new way to fight crime and to end crime, not an era, the enlightened way to end crime would be to find out why Paul Pelosi encouraged his part in that incident. Obviously, he did something to provoke the hammer wielder. Now, I am absolutely I'm dripping with sarcasm here. The guy should not be allowed out of jail. Neither should the guy who was wielding the axe at McDonald's. Neither should the guy who pushed the poor innocent guy into the subway. Neither should the people that sucker punched these people in the fight game thing. And the guy that mowed down the people with the truck, it's just insane. Of course, I don't expect this for this guy to be released, but what does bother me? And Guillermo Moreno spoke about it on his show, and he hit it hard, as well he should. And we should all who have any kind of a platform, small, medium, or large, should really hammer away at this particular position and issue, and that is there two tiers of punishment, of law and order for the haves and the have-nots, the elites and the so-called normal everyday citizens? Well, I think it's a rhetorical question. Of course there is. And it's illustrated just dramatically here with this Paul Pelosi case. The outrage, the sympathy, the empathy coming from all the political world on the left, this poor family, the Pelosi family, they didn't do anything to deserve a crazy person to come into their house and hit Paul Pelosi with a hammer. He didn't deserve to have this injustice, this crazy, horrible violence inflicted on them. Well, you know not. You're right. But neither do those others that we just mentioned. Neither did the kids in Chicago every single night, and Baltimore, and New York, and L.A., and families that live every night with the fear of somebody breaking into their homes and either beating them up or killing them, that have to hold their breath when they kiss their kids goodbye to go to school. Why? Because they can't afford gas to both drive the kid to school and drive the car to work. You know, things happen for a reason. I happen to believe that. I think there's a purpose to everything, and I think clearly there's a reason, a purpose, and that this incident, and again, we wish Paul Pelosi a full recovery. And this is just not a political statement, what I'm saying. This is a plea to a return to common sense. Because when you lose common sense in terms of public policy, people get hurt very badly and many times die. Common sense, which says there has to be justice along with our love and compassion. If you don't have justice with that, it's just the nature of man, of human beings, to abuse it, run wild, and hurt people. We wish there was all nice people, that there was no such thing as violent mental illness. We wish that every kid had a mom and a dad and they were raised right, and not raised in some gosh awful situations and see things by the time they're 5 that traumatize them forever and lead them to a life of crime. We wish that didn't happen. We wish some people were genetically just not born with an anger gene. Science proven that they are. We wish that wasn't the case, but it is. You have violent lawbreakers, and you cannot let them continue to walk among us. Because if they can get to Paul Pelosi, they can get to you. And they have gotten to you. And me, our families. I don't think there's a family that hasn't been touched, that has somebody in the family or a friend that hasn't been violently assaulted or heard about somebody close to them. So, I guess I'm going to have to wait the Barack Obama thing till tomorrow. We only got a minute 50 left in the show. But, again, I'm going to say it again because people take these snippets, and I want to really not cover myself politically, just to make this point from my heart. I'm sorry this happened to Paul Pelosi. And so, and all of you out there, and there's some out there, and I know it's hard for my viewers and listeners to believe, because hopefully you have a different kind of heart. But there are people so politically poisoned and so politically driven that they're kind of happy this happened to Paul Pelosi. And there's those on the right, on the left, who are pretty happy that Stephen Scalise, representative from Louisiana, got shot and nearly killed during the practice of the softball game. That are happy that Zeldin, that rejoiced and said he had it coming because of what he said, that guy wielding the knife. A lot of people believe in the Rand Paul deserve laughed at it. I'm not, we got to get past it. If you know these people and you hang with these people, you need to pick new friends. I don't care right or left. That's where it's going to start, is to stand up and say, when it's said privately, publicly, wherever, say, no, I don't agree with that. And by the way, I think it's horrendous. It's awful. If that's where your heart is, we're going to have a problem. And when we start doing that, we hold ourselves and each other accountable. We can begin that long trek back to that country we once were. It's Alan Autry, No Retreat. Love you all. God bless you. And good Lord willing, I'm going to be here tomorrow with Larry Powell, Sir Lawrence of Powell. Until then, just do your best. Let God do the rest. And I promise you, it's going to turn out just the way it's supposed to. Bye-bye now.